Like and subscribe might be a simple click for you, but it will lead to a transformational change of our channel. Support us to achieve 5 million subscribers by year 2028. A troop of chimpanzees traverses a thick jungle serenely. The leader halts and gazes upward as birds suddenly scatter. Hunters emerge and pursue them. One chimp nearly escapes but is seized and placed in a metal container. The frightened chimp peers through a tiny opening, observing the family she is leaving behind. Later, Dr. Will Rodman and Robert Franklin eagerly observe the same chimp, now named Bright Eyes, solving a complex puzzle. Will promptly informs his superior, Stephen Jacobs, noting that this demonstrates the success of the virus he has been developing for 5 years, A.L.Z-112. Will seeks permission for human trials, and Stephen instructs him to present the project to the board for approval. During the presentation, Will explains that the chimp previously could not solve a Lucas Tower puzzle. After receiving A.L.Z-112, a gene therapy designed to enable brain self-repair, she solved it. Will proposes this as a cure for Alzheimer's. Meanwhile, in the lab, a caretaker prepares Bright Eyes for the presentation, but she becomes hostile. Franklin attempts to calm her with her favorite drink, but she becomes agitated when released. She tries to return to her cage but flees upon seeing Franklin's tranquilizer gun. While Will assures the board that the only side effect of A.L.Z-112 is green flecks in the chimp's eyes, the panicked Bright Eyes storms through the building, eventually crashing into the boardroom where security fatally shoots her. In disbelief, Will and the board members watch the lifeless chimp on the table. Consequently, Stephen orders the termination of all test subjects. Franklin pleads for leniency, arguing that the animals have personalities and bonds, but Stephen is solely focused on business. Will asks Stephen for support to continue A.L.Z-112 development, but Stephen refuses. Soon, Franklin discovers a newborn chimp in Bright Eye's cage, revealing that she was protecting her baby during the attack. Franklin hands the infant to Will, who initially hesitates to take it. Franklin, unwilling to euthanize another animal, insists, and Will acquiesces. At home, Will finds his father, Charles, struggling with Alzheimer's, mistaking Will's significant day for a chemistry test. Will shows his father the baby chimp, which Charles adores. Later, Will is awakened by the baby's cries. As he comforts the infant and prepares a bath, he worries about his project's future. Suddenly, the baby grasps Will's finger, giving him hope. The next day, the baby astonishes Will and Charles by feeding itself despite being only a day old. Will notices green flecks in its eyes. 3 years later, Will names the baby Caesar and continues studying him. Caesar adapts to human life and moves around skillfully. Will teaches him sign language and monitors his intelligence, which includes flawlessly solving a Lucas Tower puzzle. The attic becomes Caesar's room, where he enjoys watching people through the windows. One day, Will hears a commotion upstairs and finds Charles, in a confused state, aggressively taking a lamp from his nurse and breaking it. The frazzled nurse quits, suggesting Charles should be in a nursing home. Refusing to send his father away, Will secretly administers A.L.Z-112 to Charles while Caesar watches. The next day, Will finds Charles playing the piano skillfully again, bringing tears to his eyes as he sees his father returning to his former self. While Will checks on Charles, Caesar watches children ride bikes in the neighborhood. Curious, Caesar slips out of an open window and finds a bike in a neighbor's shed. A girl spots Caesar, and her father, Douglas Hunziker, chases him with a baseball bat. Will intervenes just in time and retrieves the injured Caesar, taking him to Caroline, a vet at the zoo. As Caroline treats Caesar, he relaxes and casually signs with Will. Impressed, Caroline asks what Caesar is signing, and Will reluctantly explains that Caesar suggests they go out for dinner. Eventually, Will and Caroline grow closer, and she visits Caesar's room, praising Will for providing a good home but expressing concern about Caesar's future as he grows. Caroline admits her love for chimpanzees but also her fear of them. Caesar, good-naturedly, pretends to beat Will, showing he understood her, and they all laugh. Caroline suggests giving Caesar more space outdoors. Eventually, they take Caesar to Muir Woods, where Will unleashes him to roam freely. Caesar raises his hand to Will, seeking permission, and Caroline guides Will's hand to grant it. Caesar darts into the lush forest, exhilarated, and climbs a towering tree, feeling at home in nature. 5 years later, Caesar loves Muir Woods, often climbing to the treetops to watch the San Francisco skyline. Will and Caroline are now lovers, but Caesar feels jealous of Caroline sharing Will's attention. He interrupts their tender moments but playfully masks it as teasing. On their way back, a dog barks aggressively at Caesar, who screeches back in annoyance. Noticing their leashes, Caesar asks if he is a pet. Will patiently explains that he is Caesar's father. Seeing Caesar unsatisfied, Will takes him to Genesis and reveals that his mother died there, and he took Caesar in. He explains that Caesar's mother was part of a medicine test, the same one he gave to Charles, and that she passed its effects to Caesar. At home, Will tells Caroline that he saved Caesar, unaware of his inherited abilities. He elaborates that he designed the drug to repair brain cells, but without damaged ones to fix, Caesar's brain developed beyond expectations. Caroline is worried and asks where Caesar fits in all this. Will defends his experiment, insisting it will cure people like his father and give them back their lives. Caesar overhears their argument from the attic. He gazes into a mirror, disturbed by the revelation of his existence. The following morning at breakfast, Caesar refuses to eat. Charles uses his utensils incorrectly, so Caesar helps him, but he and Will exchange worried glances. Upon testing Charles's blood, Will discovers that he has developed antibodies reversing the cure. Meanwhile, Charles wanders outside and excitedly gets into Hunziker's car, accidentally crashing it into other vehicles. Enraged, Hunziker yells at Charles, who struggles to explain himself. Caesar, watching from the attic, reaches his breaking point and rushes out, tackling Hunziker to the ground and beating him. Hunziker flees, but Caesar jumps on him, biting off his finger before Charles calls for him to stop. Realizing what he's done, Caesar regretfully walks to Charles's arms as frightened neighbors watch. Consequently, Caesar is taken to a primate sanctuary run by John Langdon, his son Dodge, and another caretaker, Rodney. Will expresses concern as Caesar has never been with other chimps, but Langdon assures him that Caesar will thrive there. Initially pleased with the larger space, Caesar quickly becomes upset when he realizes he'll be left there. Begging to return home, Will can only promise to come back soon. Caesar cries as Will walks away. At home, Charles is saddened by Caesar's absence, and his condition deteriorates as the virus no longer affects him. Determined to save both Caesar and his father, Will advances the virus further. To convince Stephen to continue the research, he confesses that he used it on Charles with promising results. Seeing a business opportunity, Stephen supports the development of A.L.Z-113, a gaseous variant of the previous virus. At the sanctuary, Caesar is mistreated and fed slop. Disgusted, he flicks the slop at Dodge, who retaliates by hosing him down. Missing home, Caesar draws the attic window on a wall and leans against it. New apes arrive for Will's tests, and during the first trial, Will chooses Koba, a chimp that understands how to ask for food. During the procedure, Koba gets frantic and knocks off Franklin's mask, exposing him to A.L.Z-113. Meanwhile, at the sanctuary, Caesar joins the other primates in the atrium. The alpha chimp, Rocket, asserts his dominance by ripping Caesar's shirt and beating him. Caesar runs up a tree, but Rocket catches up, causing him to fall. Before Rocket can attack again, Dodge tranquilizes them both. At Genesis, Stephen is thrilled when he sees Koba writing his last name. During further tests, Franklin sneezes blood. That night, an orangutan named Maurice checks on Caesar using sign language. Maurice explains that he was trained in a circus. They watch as another primate is taken to be delivered to Genesis. Maurice warns Caesar to be careful as humans dislike smart apes. One day, Will and Caroline visit, and Caesar tells them he's hurt. Realizing who is responsible, Will shoves Dodge against a wall, but Langdon intervenes. Will tries to take Caesar back, but Langdon reminds him that he needs a court order. Caesar asks to be taken home again, but Will remorsefully tells him not yet and promises to get him out soon. Feeling betrayed, Caesar cries out as they leave and erases the attic window drawing from his wall. In the atrium, Caesar notices a ladder near the skylight and a large gorilla named Buck, who is never let out of his cage. Caesar peers through the skylight, taking in the city skyline. Later, Dodge brings friends to the enclosure and agitates the apes with a taser. When one friend leans too close, Caesar snatches a knife from his pocket. That night, Caesar uses the knife to open his cage. Maurice watches as Caesar makes his way out. Caesar opens Buck's cage and cautiously wakes him. Buck snarls until he sees the open door. Caesar coaxes him out, but Buck retreats. Suddenly, Buck bursts out, roaming the open space and bellowing a deafening roar. Grateful, Buck looks up at Caesar. Caesar then releases Rocket and challenges him, knocking him down but sparing him. Seeing Buck free, Rocket admits defeat and submits to Caesar, the new alpha. One night, Will tries to give Charles the A.L.Z-113, but Charles refuses. Will holds his father's hand as they sleep, and in the morning, Charles has passed away. After the funeral, while cleaning up, Will finds a photo of him and Caesar. Caroline advises him to accept that some things can't be changed. Will soon discovers that Stephen has fast-tracked the trials to sell A.L.Z-113 sooner. Will warns of unknown side effects, but Stephen reminds him of his own father's use of the drug. Threatening Will's career, Steven forces him to quit. Franklin's condition worsens, and he goes to Will's house for help but finds no one home. Encountering Hunziker, he sneezes blood on him. Will later bribes Langdon for Caesar's release, but Caesar, still resentful, refuses to leave his cage. That night, Caesar gains the trust of the other apes by distributing cookies. The next day in the atrium, Maurice asks why Caesar is doing this. Caesar explains that a single monkey is weak, but together, they are strong. Maurice comments that monkeys are stupid. Caesar contemplates this and watches Rodney punch a code on the door lock. At night, Caesar uses the code to slip out. He opens the skylight and travels back to Will's house. There, he sees Will and Caroline sleeping together. Caesar finds the A.L.Z-113 and understands that it will make the apes intelligent. He takes it back to the sanctuary and uses it on the apes. The next day, Caesar examines the primates' green-flecked irises, confirming they are now hyper-intelligent. Langdon notices the animals gathered and standing upright but dismisses it. Meanwhile, Franklin is found bloodied and lifeless in his bed. Later, Caesar refuses to return to his cage and instigates a fight with Dodge. When Dodge calls him a dirty ape, Caesar shouts, "No," and knocks Dodge unconscious. Then, he lets all the primates out. Rodney attempts to intervene but is attacked. Caesar spares him since he never truly harmed them and cages him instead. Dodge wakes and grabs his taser, but Caesar hoses him down, causing the water to amplify the electricity and kill Dodge. The apes bust out through the skylight and break into two groups led by Caesar and Buck. The following day, Will notices Caesar's room was recently opened, so he calls the sanctuary, but no one answers. He and Caroline go to the sanctuary and find it wrecked. They discover Dodge's body, along with a punctured A.L.Z-113 container. Caroline finds Rodney, who tells them that Caesar spoke. In the suburbs, people are shocked as apes pass through the trees. Caesar's group reaches Genesis and destroys the labs while freeing the imprisoned primates, including Koba. Steven receives a call about Franklin's demise due to the A.L.Z-113. He walks inside the smashed-up lobby and sees the apes looking down. He gets out and flees in a helicopter. At the zoo, people are excited that shy apes are out. Buck suddenly barrels down, and the people run in fear. Buck wrecks the fence, freeing the apes from captivity. They take the broken railings as makeshift weapons and then catch up with the rest to storm the city. The primates rampage through the streets. An ape is captured by animal control, but Caesar and the others throw spears at the truck. Before the man drives away, they retrieve the captured ape. They wreak havoc, destroying offices and other establishments. When police cars arrive, Maurice throws a drainage cover at them while Buck hurdles a street lamp. Climbing on top of a cable car, Caesar and his gang look toward the Golden Gate Bridge. The traffic jam on the bridge is met by the horde of apes. Will and Caroline spot them and figure they are headed to the woods. Overhead, Steven and the officers watch as the primates move north. Waiting for them at the end of the bridge are officers preparing to shoot the apes. Caesar sees the men ahead and halts. He instructs some apes to climb up while others mobilize beneath the bridge. Caroline creates a distraction, allowing Will to slip through the police. Will is horrified by the battle between apes and humans. Caesar tackles an officer, while Buck faces another head-on. Before Buck can seriously hurt the man, Caesar orders him to stop, and Buck follows. One of the primates is shot by men in the chopper, angering Maurice. Due to thick fog, the men cannot pinpoint the ape's location. Gorillas topple a bus and shield themselves. Apes on the bridge close in, and Caesar leads the attack. Apes above drop on the men while those underneath climb back up. Together, they overpower the humans. Will catches up and calls on Caesar. They share a knowing glance, but the chopper appears and opens fire. To protect Caesar, Buck jumps into the chopper and attacks. The chopper crashes and explodes on the bridge. Caesar drags a dying Buck from the debris. Holding Caesar's hand, Buck dies. Steven shouts for help, but Caesar just glares at him and leaves. Instead, Koba appears with bared teeth and kicks the chopper off the bridge. Steven screams as he falls. Will gets in a police car and follows the apes as they reach the forest. He calls out for Caesar, but Koba tackles him. Caesar arrives in time and sends Koba away. Will apologizes and promises to protect Caesar if he comes home. Caesar pulls Will close and whispers that he is home. Will is shocked upon hearing Caesar speak but accepts it. Caesar walks back to the apes, now standing upright and regarding him as their leader. With Will's blessing, Caesar climbs up the treetops to once again look over the San Francisco skyline. Later, Hunziker arrives at the airport. He experiences a nosebleed and stops to wipe his nose. He continues to head for his flight, unaware of the virus he now carries. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification button so that you don't miss any of our video updates.